tell you what. We'll save this for the end. I will double back if we have time, and we'll keep it simple for now. All right. Who in here has seen a video of Blue Origin launch? Great. I've got a friendly audience. This will be a whole lot easier. So Blue Origin was founded and funded by Jeff Bezos. Just to start off, I'm not here to give out his money today. That's not my role here. We don't re-gift his gifts. But we've been up and flying for about a year and a half now with our New Shepard rocket. And what New Shepard has really been focused on is reusability, to increase the reliability and bring down the cost of spaceflight. We have a vision at Blue Origin of millions of people living and working in space. And I'm particularly excited. My role within the company is how do we bring the science community along with us in our journey. So our New Shepard rocket that's been up and flying is a suborbital rocket. That means it goes to altitudes of about 100 kilometers on each of its missions. That's about an 11-minute flight end to end. Most of the people who call us up and jump to our website are interested in the experience of being a space tourist, a private spaceflight participant. This is a photo of our new mock-up interior that's been touring a little bit around the country. It's a great rocket. It's 6 seats. Each of those seats is a window seat. No one's sitting on the aisles. If you think about a 737, and then we got really excited when 787 brought out these windows, ours are 1,000 square inches each, which is really transformative. You're essentially flying inside a cupola. And I think that this is interesting not only from a millions of people experiencing space perspective, but also in terms of what can we think about it as an interface to science and an interface between science and the rest of the community. So as you look out those windows, this is what you're seeing. This is an actual snapshot from one of our recent flights. We're flying up through a region that has been termed by scientists the ignorosphere. It is higher than any balloons can go and lower than any satellite can orbit, which means it's an area of the upper atmosphere that's relatively uninterrogated by science, but very important in things like climate models, the aurora phenomenon, noctilucent clouds, all sorts of interesting things there. So there's science to be done outside the vehicle. On the inside of the vehicle, we also have an opportunity to do many of the things that Jennifer was just talking about in terms of what's going on Space Station, and microgravity science, looking at the role of fluids and two-phase flows, looking at biology and the reactions of cells and tissues to the microgravity environment. But also on the technology side, we see a lot of our customers coming and saying, I have a payload that I want to fly to Space Station, or a new sensor I wanted to test out before I put it on a CubeSat, or I'm looking to do something in deep space later on. But what I really need right now is risk reduction. I need to make sure I got some good preliminary data. I've got to keep my funders happy so that they keep coming back and taking us to our next destinations. How can I do something today and get results? And so I think that's one of the roles that the private space industry and the commercial space revolution really plays in the science community, is to say, let's do it sooner. Let's do it cheaper. Let's make it easier. So as we've been putting together these lockers, someone asked yesterday about where this falls in terms of pricing and capabilities. I'll get there in a second. These are 4 of the experiments that we flew in 2016. The one up on the top left was from Professor Stephen Collicott at Purdue University. He was really interested in how do you design tanks for fluid transfers, propellant transfers on orbit. How do you do geometries that are meaningful in terms of controlling where propellants are going to be in those tanks? On the upper right-hand side, you see from the University of Central Florida, this is Josh Caldwell. He was interested in planetary science and asteroid science, in particular what happens when meteorites hit asteroids. What do those dust dynamics look like? How do we understand the surface of an asteroid by what we've seen in low-G phenomenon? Bottom left is an interesting one from William Jewell College and Louisiana State University. They wanted to know what happens at boundary effects in fluid flow. Usually, if you looked at this in a ground laboratory, convection would dominate. Hot things would be less dense and they would rise, cold things would be more dense, they would sink. It'd be very hard to tell what's actually happening at interfacial tension and interfacial phenomenon. In microgravity, you can take out those big G terms from your equation and study those secondary effects. And then on the bottom right, we had another group in the sort of planetary science community. This is Dan Durda out of the Southwest Research Institute in Boulder. Dan was interested in what happens in collisions in low-gravity environments. So the rings of Saturn, protoplanetary disks. And we fondly called his the box of rocks experiments. Literally, it was 2 boxes of rocks, 2 GoPro cameras, and then a lot of modeling software behind it, looking at how different kinds of geometries interacted in these environments. So it's not a long-duration spaceflight. We're not going to be doing exploration class 2-year experiments on space station here. But we are going to do a whole lot more than you can do on a parabolic flight. And when you think about it in sort of the spectrum of things that are out there, 3-ish of microgravity are actually getting really clean low-G levels that we've been seeing on our flights. And what's transformative about the commercial space world is that you no longer have to go out as a space agency, as a foundation or a lab, and think of yourself as a space agency. You don't have to buy an entire rocket anymore. So we're talking about, for a single payload locker that's about the size of a dorm microwave, on the order of 50 to 100K for most science. For our educational users, we've driven that down as far as we can. Blue Origin has chipped in and brought that down to less than half the cost of football uniforms. So literally any K through 12 institution in this country that can afford new football uniforms for their team can have a space program. That's really transformative in terms of how we think about the role of science in education and the role of education in science. In addition to what goes on in the capsule I mentioned, we are starting to look at interfaces that are on the other side of the equation, outside in space. So this is actually from the capsule looking back down at the booster after separation. And you can see that ring fin that sits at the top of our booster gives us stability, because we don't just fly up, we also fly down. But so on top of that interface there, we're looking at putting some new lockers so that we can start to study things like the RAM flow as we go through the upper atmosphere. What can we capture? What can we sample? What's interesting up there? In the lee of the vehicle, as we come back down, starting to test out things like CubeSat technologies, things that need access to hard vacuum atomic oxygen. So why? Why are we doing all this? Jeff has a few quotes. I'll share 2 of them with you today. When we think about what the opportunities are for millions of people living and working in space, it's about Earth. It's not really about space, right? So energy is limited here. In at least a few hundred years, all of our heavy industry will be moved off planet. Earth will be zone residential and light industrial. I can see the signpost now, Earth zone residential. But if we think about this, Jeff always puts forward very long-term views, and Blue is not about what we're doing today. We're about what comes out of that in the long run. In the midterm for us, so near term is New Shepard, named after Alan Shepard, America's first suborbital astronaut. Midterm for us is New Glenn, named after John Glenn, America's first orbital astronaut. Longer term for us is New Armstrong, and we're not talking about where that goes. But if you think about what the capabilities are, New Glenn is very large. 45 metric tons to low Earth orbit, 13 metric tons to GTO. It's a big rocket. It comes in both 2- and 3-stage variants. Interestingly, you can see in this picture here, the 2-stage variant has a 5.4-meter fairing. We're showing in this image the 3-stage variant with our 7-meter fairing. That can also come in the 2-stage as well. If you start to think about how that shapes science, right, we're starting to see opportunities opening up for larger and larger physical infrastructure. And when our friends in Made in Space come up, I'm sure they'll talk about the ability to make things that don't have to fit in fairings anymore. For now, there's still quite a bit of opportunity to design space science missions that are fitting in larger fairings than we've been able to use commercially in the past. So here again, you see that vehicle. If my videos were working, you would see that this one flies up, also separates, places its critical payload in orbit. The first stage, just like on New Shepard, is going to come back and return to Earth for reusability. And again, if you threw away your airplane every time you traveled, we wouldn't fly to conferences like this. If you throw away your rocket, we don't go to space. So not in the quantities and opportunities we want to. So this is how we envision scaling. New Glenn is starting to become a reality. This is our BE-4 engine, first one off the line, rolling out of the factory a few weeks ago. We've broken ground on our manufacturing facility, 750,000 square feet just outside the gates at Kennedy Space Center, as well as on our launch pad down there at the old LC-36 down on ICBM row. We're really excited about moving from suborbital as a way of opening doors to New Glenn as a way of expanding access. And because we had so many students in the room yesterday, I just wanted to point out we love students. We love working with you guys in any variety of ways. Most common for us is internships. We have them year-round. These are two of our interns that got to come down for one of our recent test flights. We're also participating in the Brooke Owens Fellowship that Olivia pointed out yesterday. Very excited to be part of that program. And when Jeff starts talking about, again, why we do this, it's not about a plan B. It's not about let's all leave Earth and go run away to another planet. Plan B is to make sure Plan A works. We've sent robotic probes all over the solar system. Let me assure you, this is the best planet. So what we can do to help reinforce that, help increase the infrastructure that allows us to stretch beyond our current boundaries, use space for all that it can be utilized for, both science and manufacturing and tourism and everything else that comes down the pipeline. And for me personally, this is my daughter Sally. She's hanging out inside our crew capsule mock-up. And for Sally, this is completely normal. In fact, she asked us if we could bring some of her friends down to the factory for a tour recently. They wanted to mock up a space mission. Yeah. We're building a fleet of spaceships in their backyard. Right? These kids are 9 years old, and for them, that is reality. And I can't wait for it to be reality for all of us as well. Thank you. With that, I'm happy to take some questions.
Yes, I love your quotes and integrating outreach and space science. It's wonderful. Please, go ahead.
When are you going to start flying New Shepard again? What opportunity will there be to fly payloads, student or otherwise, on those test flights?
So next flight will be as soon as we're ready, but we have payloads booked up on a number of flights out already. We're starting to book into our 2018 flights. So lots of opportunities there. Our next flight up does include some of our K-12 payloads as well as professional ones. So really excited about giving them a chance to tell their story.
And next question.
Yeah, great.
How did you get the cost of the student payloads down to about 5%?
You know, part of it is a constraint problem. The student classrooms we work with, we've got them working within a pretty small box with a little bit of power and data. And they've been incredibly creative at making good use of that. I've got a group of second graders in rural Indiana that was curious whether fireflies would light up in zero-G. Some high schoolers in Greece that were curious if their local olive oil would interact differently with water in zero-G. And university students that are developing technologies for CubeSat. So it's a really wide range of folks who are coming in to play in that interface.
Thank you to your team for doing that. That's astonishing access to space. It's really unprecedented.
Yeah, thanks, I appreciate that.
Yes, so I think you do that really hard. That's a wonderful thing because students are really smart and they will innovate.
They will, and it's that opportunity to be hands-on is something that we're always looking for at Blue Origin. Almost all the students that we have hired have been coming out of university programs where they were part of a robotics team or a launch vehicle, or they have an orientation towards making and hacking and building. One of the good questions we used to ask is, what's the last thing you broke? It's always a good sign. Any other questions? All right, with that, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.